It's sewing day again at the studio, which means I'm down here on the floor trying to do a bustle. And I thought I'd bring you in and see how to do this bustle. Have you ever had one of these frustrating ones where the lining is all attached, where they have these deep scallops, and when you try to bring them up, some of it is way up off the ground, some of it is on the ground or too long. I've thought about doing this one in maybe a couple different ways, but no matter what I do, the lining is always way up off the ground. So I'm going to bring you in close and let's do this one together and see if we can't make this work. So the very first thing to do after you've assessed it on the ground, I like it spread out on the ground so I can really see how the train works. But then after I've assessed it there, then I put it on a table so I won't be on the ground the entire time. Depending on the dress, there are some crazy big dresses, poofy dresses that just have to be done on the ground. But if I can, I try to get them up on the table. And the first thing I want to assess is the fact that no matter what I do, this lining, when it is attached to the lace, it just doesn't lay right. So I'm going to have to disconnect the lining. And as you can see, it's all attached here. So let me bring you in close and show you what I've done. It's important that that lining still remain attached so that as the bride goes down the aisle, that lining doesn't try to have its own mind and take off one way or another. So when the train is down, it's very important that that lining is attached. But it's not so great for the bustle. So what I've done is I've gone to each of the connection points where they had it stitched, and I've added a snap. So, and you want to make sure it's a nice strong snap and an invisible snap. So the snaps I would prefer to use, and I collect them off of any time I have a wedding gown that maybe needs to be altered and needs the snaps removed. I collect these. They are a little clear snap that is kind of hard plastic and it's square. They come with wedding dresses, and I have tried over and over again to find these and can't. So if you know a good location to get these snaps, let me know, because right now I kind of hoard them and I save them. But since I don't have enough to do this wedding gown now, I got these from my local sewing center and had them ordered, and they work pretty good. Let me open up a pack so you can see. I just don't like that they don't hide as well, but if you have some lace applique, you can hide them underneath lace applique. But they come like this, and then they just come off of that. So that is what I have done all the way around. This was connected in, I think, 7 spots. So, and anytime you go to undo any of these snaps, use your nail. Don't pull on the fabric, and teach your brides to do that too. So the brides and the moms, so that at the wedding they're not ripping the lace or the tulle. So in every spot that the company, the designer, had it tacked, I have put a snap. It's a good snap when you can hardly get it off. So, oh, one more. So now I have my top layer, my bottom layer, so I can bustle this one separate from that layer. Okay, first step is to get your lining up and out of the way. And so I just do that by playing around with it, pulling some different spots to see where it best pulls up. And I'll just pin those in place and then mark myself with my safety pins. And then you can see in this one, and I'll bring you close here in a minute, I already have some buttons here and some loops here. I also have buttons right here. Now the one thing you do have to be careful of is if this is where they're going to sit, you don't want a button that is going to be, what do you call it, knobby or bumped up, because that's going to hurt when they sit. Not to mention the other thing you don't want, and I'll show you on the outside, you don't want your bustle point to come kind of out of their rear end. I've seen too many of those that don't look nice because of the placement. On the lining, I'm going to go right here below the zipper just because it's the best place for it, but it'll be covered up. But the outside, I want to be careful that it doesn't have the look that it's coming out of their rear end, to say that nicely. So I just mark myself a couple spots, mark it with my safety pins, and then I sew on my buttons, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Let me first show you what this looks like. Up. And then I need to still sew that one together, but it's going to be basically up and out of her way. So let me bring you in close and show you those. Okay, so I have some clear buttons right here and right here, and then I have some loops. Basically, it's ribbon. It's just the cheap stuff that I buy like at Joann's, or you can buy it online. It's 1/8 inch. It's very narrow, but it's nice and strong. So if you have a heavy bustle, that's not going to break while she's dancing. What will break a lot of times is the fabric itself, and I'll show you some things you can do for that too. But I'm going to sew those here, and then you pull them under, and you can't hardly see them until you pull them out. And you can see that. And then you loop that to there, loop that to there. But let me sew this one on so you can see that. Okay, right here is my mark where I want to sew a ribbon loop. And I don't really measure, I just cut like about that much. I have a needle that has a big enough eye to hold ribbon. Then I will come up under. Now this is very lightweight, so I'm not going to support it. Sometimes if it's a heavier train, I will take a small piece of elastic. I'll show you that on the netting, or a small piece of clear elastic or white elastic, and I'll put it on here as your base. This is very lightweight, so I'm not going to do it on here. And you just come up. The ones with the big eye on the needle, sometimes they're hard to get through the layers. You have to give them a little bit of a tug. So then you can see that I just have those two ribbons, and then even that out. Let me see if I can zoom you in a little bit. Okay, and what I do is I actually just put my finger in there. Let me see. Go to tie it, and then I just have my finger in there. Just a finger's width. Tie it twice, and then to get these to lay nice, I do one more where they're together. And I just do kind of an up and over knot, and I try to take that knot and stick it right at the same place as the others. And then I will just cut that off. Now, one thing you can do is you could also burn these edges with a lighter, and that would keep it from fraying. Be really careful if you're near the dress, and especially around tulle, because tulle will go up in flames. So you would just hit that really quick. I'm not going to do that on this. I don't really do it, and it seems to always work okay. So then on the outside, all you see is a little tiny stitch with a ribbon. But then you have to instruct, you have to help your mothers of the bride, your maid of honor, your bride, to learn where they are and how to pull them up. And easy peasy, you find where those ribbons are, you pull them all out. And you connect them to your buttons. Okay, now let's do the outside layer. Okay, and now we have the outer layer, and it just takes us kind of pinning around and seeing what works best. Ask your bride, does she mind if you pin high? Because you'll be able to do less points if you pin a little higher. Or is she wanting to have the shape behind her and have them all really low? So all the spots would be low and you'd have many of them if everything was low. And this is such a long train that I would definitely have to put multiple, even just on the length, just many, like all across here. This bride was actually just wanting it simple and easy. So talk to your bride, see what they want, show them the different options. This is your basic American bustle is what they call this. It's just the up and over. And so we had kind of figured if I go a little bit high, then I only have to worry about these side seams here. Let's see if I can find, I put some pins in here. So more like that. Now that we've kind of marked what we're going to lift, let me show you a couple of the things that I do. Number one, I have found these, and I've just found these at Joann's. You could probably find them elsewhere as well. They are just a crystal button. So perfect. For almost every gown I find, these work really, really well. They just blend in. In fact, I have some of them on here, and you probably can't even tell I do. Right here, there's one of those crystal buttons on here. And I just find that, especially if there's a little bit of sparkle, they blend in so well. Depends on your dress on what button you're going to use. So find what works best for you. And then to sew on the buttons, I actually use a craft or a button thread. It says button and craft. And it's just a thicker thread, which is going to hold really nice. Then the other problem is that you put this button on this nice, very delicate, I try to put it wherever there's an applique because that's a little stronger, because the tulle will just rip away when they are at the reception. So in order not to put more pressure on the fabric and the applique, I try to back it with something. And I have tried multiple things through the years. I had one seamstress that taught me how to use elastic. So if you have an applique hiding the button, first of all, you're going to get more strength with the applique. And then, or if you even have a satin dress, we used to just take this elastic, and I have it in, I lost my other piece. Oh, here it is in my hand. Here it is in ivory, here it is in more of a white. And I would just cut it into little squares, and I back the button up with that. But then I was finding that so much of this is so sheer, I didn't want it showing. This is actually stronger if you can get away with hiding that. But then I went to an invisible elastic, and I will, it's stretchy, just anything clear to kind of back up the strength of your thread and your button or your loop. And it puts more pressure on the elastic than it does on the fabric, which is nice. Here is also another idea. These are the clear straps that come with bras. These make a really great backing for your buttons and your loops. So try something like that and back those up to give it a little more strength. Because you want to think about more than just the fitting. You want this to last through the night of dancing. And of course, you know, some people really get dancing and it's not going to fully do that. But let's sew that button on here. I'll use my craft thread. I'll use my crystal button. And my needle. Sliding off my table. There it goes. There it goes. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use the elastic because I've got a piece, and you just take your craft button thread, put it through your elastic. Let me get rid of that little metal tack. Then find your spot, and like I said, I am going to do it right at this applique. So here's my elastic. I'm going to come up right by this pin and then get rid of the pin. And then right back down through that applique. And on the other side, I don't know if you can see that, white on white. Here's my square of elastic. So I want to come up through that. And then back down. Guys, it's harder on camera than it. I'm used to doing this, but not on camera, to show everybody. Okay, and I'm going to go a second time. And with this craft thread doubled up, you don't have to really go more than 2 times. You can if you want. And then I'm going to knot that on the back. Okay, and now, you probably can't even see it. It's right here. Now, it has buttons down here. In fact, she had me change some out that were her great aunts. So we did every other, and this is, you know, some buttons here. Why can't I use these buttons? Well, first of all, the ones that came with it have a plastic shank, and that's the loop that you sew it onto. And the plastic shanks, when they are bustled, they break in the middle of dancing. So I never use those. If I put my button up here, I would actually put it in between buttons. So you might have all fabric buttons, and then my crystal one would be in the middle there. You hardly even notice it's there. So if I put my button up here, then I would put my loop down here. So the problem is that she already had me doing the every other button with her Gray Dance buttons. I didn't want to add one extra looking button to it because it would have just been off. So I went ahead and I'm going to put my loop up here. I'm going to actually put one on each side of the zipper, and then this button down here will loop up here. I also did the same thing here. I put my buttons down here, and I put my loops up in here. And the reason I did that is because this is right where she's gonna sit. And these buttons are not comfortable to sit on. So I don't want those buttons. If I had these buttons, I'd want them like, you know, when you have a A-line, a lot of times I'll have them up here because they just look like the beadwork. But with these, you don't want to be sitting on these. Okay, we have now done the button, the crystal button on here with button or craft thread and the security on the back with the elastic. Now we're going to put a loop in this spot right here. So what you're going to need is some ribbon. Now on the underside of the lining, I used a ribbon that was more like a satin ribbon to match the fabric. But now we have this sheer fabric that we're trying to hide. So I like to use this sheer organza ribbon for that. And then also I have a little bit of one of those bra straps or elastic. I'm going to cut a square of that to put on the back. Got my needle that can hold the ribbon. And then one more item that I didn't use on the lining, and that is a little tiny bead there. That's why I collect beads and keep them here in this case, because I'll show you how I'm going to end up using that. But whenever I do an alteration, I take the beads and I separate them into a container like this. So when it comes to times like these, I can quickly pull what I need. Now I need a bead that can also fit over one of my big eyelet or one of my big eye needles. So you got to test it first and make sure it can go over it. It has to have a big enough hole in there. Right now you're probably thinking, why do I need a bead for a ribbon? And that is mainly because they're very hard to find on here. And when people pick at them, they tend to take the part of the applique strings up. So I like to have a bead on there to help. There is nothing like filming invisible items. So I've got my sheer organza ribbon. I've got my little square. It's kind of like an invisible elastic. And I'll put that on there like so. I can't even focus on something invisible. And then I will come up right. I have my pin here, and this is where I want it. So I'm gonna be straddling this. There's a seam right here, and that's where I'm putting it. So I'm going to come right here next to my pin and poke up right near this seam. And then once I do that, I'm going to take out my safety pin. You have to give it a little tug, because when you have a needle with a large eye, it is hard to get through these appliques sometimes. And I'm tugging because I've got that elastic underneath it. Now here's where you're going to put your bead on it. And then poke down. And then on this side, can you see it? Need to pull that tail out. Oh, I took it off of the needle too soon. I need to get it in my elastic. I don't know if you can see that invisible elastic, but I just poked it through both sides of that elastic. I have seen people actually do this with clear buttons as well. That's another great use for that. And when I have a lot of little clear buttons, I end up doing that. So now you have these, and you're going to tie it off just like you did the lining layer. I always put my finger in it. Tie it, and then pinch it neatly together. Get your finger out. And then I do a little tie together, making that knot. Can you see that? It's supposed to be invisible, so here we are. And then I will cut the little trains, and like I said before, you can use your lighter and so they won't fray, but do not get your lighter anywhere near this tool. It will go up like a flame or put a hole in it. so when it's supposed to be invisible and blend in, but the good part is then you can tell your customer, the mom or the maid of honor, whoever's doing the bustle, to look for these little beads that really don't show much, but they make it so much easier for grabbing onto. You see that? And then this will hold up like that. Can you see that? That's the button. That's the loop. Just like that. There's another little trick for when they really get dancing, and I'll back it up and show you that. Okay, another trick that I learned from some of my seamstress friends on a Facebook seamstress group that I'm part of is when they bustle it the day of, if they twist it like this, then put it in, and it untwists, then it locks it in better because it twists the ribbon. It locks it in better for when they really get to dancing, so you can actually show your bride or the bride's mom how to do that. Just take where you're going to do it, twist it, put it on, untwist, and voila, that is locked in for the night. So you can see that loop right there. All you have to do to make it disappear is go from the underside, pull it, and you don't even know that that loop is there. Okay, let's bustle it up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is just one way to bustle. There are hundreds of ways to bustle, and every single dress is a different challenge of how to make it happen. But hopefully I taught you a few little things that might make it a little easier or make the bustle a little stronger for your bride. And so let me know down in the comments. Maybe you have some different ideas of how to bustle. I'm open to those, and I would love for you to share with the people here in the comment section. Tell us what you use to bustle your dresses. And this, of course, is a very simple, just American bustle. That's the up and over. There are so many other kinds. There are French bustles and ballroom bustles, and maybe we'll get to do some of those here down the road. If you like this content, please subscribe, please like, to help my videos go a little farther, and we will see you in the next video. Happy sewing, everyone. Love you.